Welcome to today's deep dive. And I want you to think about the last time you decided you were going to just completely overhaul your life.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. Like maybe you wanted to get in shape, so you swore you'd wake up at 5 a.m. every single day to run 3 miles.
Or, you buy all the expensive gear.
Yes. Or you wanted to tap into your creative side, so you bought one of those really expensive leather-bound notebooks, and you promised yourself you'd write a new chapter of your novel every single night before bed.
It's that sudden burst of motivation.
Exactly. We all know that feeling. We all have that fire, that intense desire to improve. But if you're anything like the rest of the human race, that new behavior lasted maybe a week.
If that.
Yeah. The running shoes are now permanently shoved into the back of the closet. That beautiful notebook is gathering dust on your nightstand, basically just serving as a coaster for your water glass.
It's sad, but it's true.
And you're just left sitting there completely frustrated, wondering why the changes we so desperately want to make rarely ever stick.
Yeah, it's an incredibly frustrating cycle, but it's also universally common. And a big reason for that is simply the environment we live in.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we're surrounded by a culture that is just completely obsessed with the idea of massive overnight overhaul.
Oh, for sure. The whole new year, new me thing.
Right. The messaging we constantly get is that to achieve a big transformative result, we have to take massive, grueling action.
But that's not what the research actually says, is it?
Not at all. The sources we're looking at today argue the complete opposite. They make the case that true, lasting change, it doesn't require these grand gestures. In fact, lasting change is almost microscopic.
And that brings us to the core mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We are unpacking a huge stack of sources centered around James Clear's massively successful book, Atomic Habits.
It's a classic for a reason.
It really is. Our goal today is to dig into the actual underlying mechanics of habit formation. We want to figure out why our best intentions usually fall apart and what surprising tiny shifts are actually required to succeed.
Which means, before we can even touch on the how of building a habit, we really have to fundamentally reevaluate how we measure progress.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we're talking about a completely different scale of change, right?
Exactly. The philosophy here isn't about transforming yourself in 30 days. It is strictly about aiming to get just 1% better every day.
But see, on the surface, that sounds like a nice sentiment you'd see on a motivational poster in a corporate break room. Just get 1% better.
It does sound a bit cliche at first.
Right. And practically speaking, 1% is so small it's almost invisible. Like, how does that actually move the needle in someone's life?
It moves the needle mathematically. People chronically underestimate the value of making small improvements on a daily basis precisely because, as you said, 1% isn't notable in the moment.
You don't look in the mirror after one day of eating a salad and see a different person.
Exactly. But the math of compound interest applies to our habits just as rigorously as it applies to our finances.
Okay, so run the numbers for me.
The text lays out the staggering reality of this. If you can get just 1% better each day for 1 year, the compounding effect means you will end up 37 times better by the time the year is done.
Wait, 37 times better, not 37%.
37 times better.
Oh, wow. I'm trying to wrap my head around the math there. Because that level of growth in a single year from basically unnoticeable daily changes, that is hard to conceptualize.
It really is. I always think of it like the trajectory of an airplane.
Okay.
If a plane leaves Los Angeles headed for New York, and the nose of the plane shifted just a few degrees south, a tiny fraction of a change, the passengers wouldn't even feel it.
They'd have no idea.
Right. But over the course of the entire flight, that fractional shift compounds, and the plane ends up in Washington, D.C. instead of New York.
That makes a lot of sense.
And the inverse of this equation is just as true, which is what makes it so critical. If you get 1% worse each day for 1 year, your skills or your health decline nearly down to zero.
So it works against you too.
Exactly. There's a great quote from the text that sums this up. The seed of every habit is a single tiny decision. The task of breaking a bad habit is like uprooting a powerful oak, while building a good habit is like cultivating a delicate flower.
I love that. It makes me think about a smartphone battery.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, like when you're sitting on the couch just scrolling through your phone, you don't really notice the battery draining 1% at a time. The screen looks exactly the same at 99% as it does at 80%.
You don't even think about it until it hits the red zone.
Right. And when you plug it into the wall, you don't sit there and celebrate every single percent it charges.
Yeah.
But if you give it a few hours of that invisible 1% shift in either direction, you are either holding a completely dead piece of glass or you're fully charged and ready to go.
That battery analogy highlights the invisibility of the process perfectly, and it points to a crucial insight from the source material. It does not actually matter how successful or unsuccessful you are at this exact moment.
What do you mean? What matters instead?
What matters is your trajectory. Are your current habits, your daily 1% battery drains or charges, putting you on the path towards success?
So it's about the direction, not the current location.
Yes. A millionaire who spends more than they earn is currently wealthy, but they are on a trajectory toward bankruptcy.
Right.
While a broke student who manages to save a tiny bit of money every week is on a trajectory toward financial freedom, the daily 1% is the only thing that dictates the final destination.
But, okay, if we accept that these tiny 1% changes are mathematically powerful, we run into a pretty glaring issue.
Which is?
If it's only 1%, it should be incredibly easy to do.
Yeah.
Yet we still fail constantly.
We do.
We still stop going to the gym. We still stop saving the money. If the desire is there and the required effort is tiny, what is the roadblock?
Well, the roadblock isn't our desire. The flaw is in how we attempt to make the change. We tend to focus all of our energy on the endpoint rather than the mechanism that gets us there.
So we're looking at the wrong thing.
Exactly. We focus entirely on goals rather than systems.
I have to admit, this is where I start to feel some friction with the source material.
Oh, how come?
Because everywhere you look, from corporate retreats to fitness influencers on social media, society constantly tells us to set massive goals.
That's very true.
We are told to make vision boards, write our 5-year goals on our bathroom mirrors, and constantly visualize the finish line. If I completely drop my goals, aren't I just going to wander aimlessly? Like, is James Clear really saying goals are totally useless?
What's fascinating here is that he isn't saying goals are entirely useless, but rather that they have a very specific, limited function that we have just blown completely out of proportion.
Okay, limited how?
Goals are strictly about the results you want to achieve. They are the rudder setting the direction. Systems, on the other hand, are about the processes that actually move you. They are the oars in the water.
So if I'm a writer, my goal is writing a book. My system is the writing schedule I follow every morning.
Correct. Or if you're a coach, your goal is to win the championship. Your system is what your team actually does at practice every single afternoon.
Right, the daily grind.
Exactly. And think about it. If you are a coach and you completely ignore your goal of winning the championship, and you only focus on running the best possible daily practice system, would you still get results?
I mean, logically, yes.
The argument here is yes, you absolutely would. The score takes care of itself. There is a critical line from the text that summarizes this dynamic so well. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
Wow.
Yeah.
You fall to the level of your systems.
Yeah.
That is slightly terrifying, but also oddly relieving.
It should be relieving.
Yeah.
Because it removes the moral failing we tend to associate with not reaching our goals.
Yes, that guilt.
Right. If you're struggling to change your habits, it is incredibly easy to internalize that as a lack of willpower. You tell yourself you're lazy or that you just don't want it badly enough.
We beat ourselves up.
Constantly. But this framework argues that willpower has very little to do with it. Bad habits repeat themselves again and again. Not because you don't want to change, but because you have the wrong system for change.
I see how that changes the paradigm. Setting a goal is about achieving one single accomplishment and then stopping. It's about crossing a finish line.
Yes. But long-term thinking is actually goalless thinking.
Goalless thinking.
Think about the classic yo-yo diet effect. What happens when someone only focuses on the goal of losing 20 pounds for a wedding?
They starve themselves until the big day.
Right. They restrict their diet, they push themselves, and they hit the goal just in time for the event. And then, the day after the wedding, the motivation vanishes.
Because the goal is gone.
Exactly. The goal was achieved, so the behavior stops and the weight comes right back. The goal created a temporary change. But if their focus had been on the system of eating healthy, the wedding would just be a milestone on a continuous journey.
So for you listening to this right now, this is a moment to genuinely evaluate your own life. If you're failing to change your diet, your study habits, or your sleep schedule, stop beating yourself up. The problem isn't you. The problem is your system.
It's a structural issue.
Which forces us to ask, how do we actually construct a system that works? Like, what is the engine powering these systems?
To understand the engine, we have to look at the underlying biology. We have to move from the theory of systems into the practical neurological framework of human behavior.
Getting into the brain mechanics?
Yes. The author breaks down the neurological feedback loop that drives literally every habit we have, whether it's a good habit or a terrible one.
Okay, what does that loop look like?
It consists of 4 distinct steps: cue, craving, response, and reward.
Let's break each of those down carefully because understanding the biology seems like the key to hacking the whole thing. Let's start with the cue.
The cue is the trigger. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment for hints of where rewards are located.
So it's looking for signals.
Right. A cue is just a piece of information that predicts a reward. Your phone buzzes on the table. That is a cue. The smell of a bakery when you walk down the street is a cue.
Okay, so the brain registers the cue, and that leads directly to the craving. But what is the craving biologically? Is it just wanting the thing?
It's a bit more complex than that. The craving is the motivational force behind the habit, and it is driven by a dopamine spike.
Dopamine.
But here's the critical part. You do not crave the action itself. You crave the change in state it delivers.
Interesting. So I don't crave eating the donut. I crave the sugar rush.
Exactly. You don't actually crave the physical act of turning on a television. You crave the feeling of being entertained or distracted. You don't crave a cigarette. You crave the relief it provides.
That makes total sense.
The brain anticipates that relief, spikes your dopamine to get you to act, and that creates the craving.
Which pushes you right into the third step, the response.
Yes. The response is the actual habit you perform. Picking up the phone, eating the pastry, lighting the cigarette.
And whether you do it or not depends on how hard it is, right?
Exactly. Whether a response occurs depends entirely on how much friction is between you and the action. The human brain is evolutionarily wired to conserve energy.
We're naturally lazy.
We are. If a response requires more physical or mental effort than you are willing to expend, you simply won't do it.
And if you do expend the energy and complete the response, you reach the final step, the reward.
The reward is the end goal of every habit, and it serves 2 major purposes.
Okay, what's the first?
First, it satisfies your craving, delivering that change in state you desired.
Right.
Second, and more importantly for habit formation, it teaches your brain which actions are worth remembering in the future. It closes the feedback loop.
So it wires it into memory.
Exactly. Your brain associates the satisfaction of reading a text message back with the initial buzz of the phone. Cue, craving, response, reward. This loop runs continuously, thousands of times a day.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because once you lay out that 4-step loop, it starts to look like a control panel.
That's a great way to put it.
If you understand how the machine works, you can manipulate the levers.
And the text provides a toolkit for doing exactly that, which it calls the 4 laws of behavior change. It maps directly onto that neurological loop.
Okay, what are the 4 laws?
It's the practical application of the science. To create a good habit, you align with the 4 laws. For the cue, you make it obvious.
Okay.
For the craving, you make it attractive. For the response, you make it easy. And for the reward, you make it satisfying.
Make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. It's remarkably similar to being a video game designer, but for your own life.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Yeah, think about how a game is designed to quietly guide your behavior and keep you playing. If you want to build a good habit, let's say you want to drink a gallon of water every day, you don't just hope you remember.
Right, hoping doesn't work.
You put the power up right in the middle of your screen. You make the cue obvious by placing a massive full glass of water right on your nightstand so it is the first thing you see.
Yeah.
And you make the response easy by carrying a water bottle with you everywhere, just removing all the friction.
You are intentionally designing your environment so that making the good choice requires the least amount of energy possible.
And what about breaking bad habits?
The true power of this framework reveals itself when you invert it to break bad habits. You just flip the 4 laws.
So attacking the loop from the opposite direction.
Precisely. If you want to stop eating junk food, you don't rely on willpower. You attack the environment.
So you make the cue invisible.
Yes. Make it invisible. Do not keep it in the house. If the cue isn't there, the dopamine spike of the craving is never triggered.
And then make it unattractive.
Right. And make it difficult if you really want junk food. Force yourself to walk to the store to get it. That adds a massive amount of physical friction to the response. And finally, make it unsatisfying.
You are literally building obstacles into your own video game.
You really are.
Like, if my guitar's lock in its case, in the back of my closet, under a pile of winter coats, my brain calculates the energy required to get it and says, no thanks, let's just watch TV.
The friction is too high.
But if I apply the laws and put the guitar on a stand right next to the couch, I've made the cue obvious and the response easy. My brain just takes the path of least resistance.
You are taking the heavy lifting off of your willpower and outsourcing it to your environment.
But, I want to dig deeper here, because even with the perfect environment, people still self-sabotage.
That's true.
You can make things incredibly easy. You can have the guitar right next to the couch, but if your new habits clash with who you fundamentally believe you are, they eventually fail.
Yes, they will.
Which leads us to the deepest layer of this entire source material. The root of all behavior change is identity.
This is perhaps the most profound psychological shift the author proposes. He introduces the concept of behavior change as being structured like the layers of an onion.
Okay, peel the onion for us.
There are 3 layers. The outermost layer is your outcomes, what you get.
Right.
The middle layer is your processes, what you do. And the innermost core is your identity, what you believe.
And the fatal flaw is that almost everyone starts from the outside layer and tries to work their way in.
Yes. When someone decides to change, they almost always start by defining an outcome. They say, I want to run a marathon.
Or I want to lose 30 pounds.
Exactly. Then they define the process. I will run 5 miles a week. But they never touch their identity.
They don't change how they view themselves?
Deep down, they still fundamentally view themselves as a couch potato who is forcing themselves to run. They are acting completely out of alignment with their core belief about themselves.
And the brain doesn't like that.
The brain hates cognitive dissonance. If your identity doesn't align with your behavior, the behavior will not last.
It's just a matter of time before you snap back.
Right. To achieve permanent change, you have to start from the inside and work outward. You have to build identity-based habits.
There's a story in the text about James Clear's wife that perfectly illustrates how an identity is forged, and I think it's worth sharing.
Oh, the name memory story.
Yes. When she was in high school, it was the first day of class in a room full of strangers. The teacher asked everyone to introduce themselves and then asked if anyone could remember everyone's name.
Which is a nightmare scenario for most people.
Right. But his wife raised her hand and perfectly recalled the names of all 30 strangers in the room.
But the crucial part of that story isn't the act of remembering the names, it is the reaction she received afterward.
Exactly. The guy sitting next to her was completely stunned and told her he couldn't even remember her name.
It was a huge moment of validation.
And that specific moment of external affirmation forged a brand new identity for her. In that moment, she internalized the belief, I am the type of person who is good at remembering people's names.
A new belief took root.
And because she believed that about herself, she spent the rest of her life paying closer attention when introduced to people. Her new identity drove a lifetime of habits.
Your current behaviors are simply a reflection of your current identity. What you do right now is a mirror image of the type of person you subconsciously believe that you are.
So how do we change that mirror image?
The text lays out a very clear 2-step recipe for sustained success. Step 1, decide the type of person you want to be.
Okay.
Step 2, prove it to yourself with small wins.
So, it sounds great in theory, but I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone listening right now.
Sure.
How do you actually prove it to yourself without feeling like a total imposter?
That's the challenge.
Let's say I want to be a writer, but I haven't written anything in 10 years. If I write one single paragraph today telling myself I am a writer, feels like a massive stretch. It feels like I'm just lying to myself in the mirror.
It feels fake.
Yeah. How many wins does it actually take before your identity truly shifts?
That imposter syndrome is exactly what derails most people, but the text offers what I think is its most powerful metaphor to answer that exact question.
What's the metaphor?
Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
A vote. Oh,
Think about a political election. No single vote is going to win the election on its own, right?
Of course not.
Writing one paragraph does not instantly make you a world-renowned author in your own mind. Going for a 5-minute walk does not instantly make you an athlete. But as the votes build up, so does the evidence of your new identity.
I see where this is going. If I write a paragraph today, I haven't written a book, but I have cast one vote for the identity of I am a writer.
Exactly. And if you do it again tomorrow, that is another vote. You don't need a unanimous decision to win an election.
You just need a majority.
Precisely. You don't need to be perfect. You will still cast votes for your old identity. You will skip the gym. You'll eat the junk food.
We're human.
Right. But you just need to cast more votes for your new identity than you do for your old one. This is why meaningful change does not require radical change.
Small habits are just votes.
Small habits are powerful not just because of the math of compound interest, but because they provide undeniable evidence of a new identity. If a tiny change provides evidence that shifts how you see yourself, then that small change is actually massive.
You aren't lying to yourself. You are just looking at the ballot box.
That's a great way to summarize it.
If you cast the vote counts. That connects everything we've talked about today. The 1% improvements aren't just mathematical progress, they are daily votes.
They're evidence.
And the systems you build using the 4 laws, putting the guitar by the couch, putting the water glass by the bed, those are just mechanisms to make casting those good votes as biologically effortless as possible.
Which forces you to ask yourself if you are willing to be patient. Because ultimately, your progress is determined by your commitment to a process of endless refinement.
Falling in love with the process.
True long-term thinking is goalless thinking. It is about falling in love with the system itself rather than the destination.
Well, to summarize this entire journey for everyone listening, it is time to drop the obsession with massive, overnight goals that honestly only lead to burnout.
Draw them out.
Build a 1% better system instead. Design your environment using the 4 laws of behavior change so that your biology is working for you, not against you.
Make the good habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
And most importantly, stop worrying about the final results so you can focus entirely on casting daily votes for your new identity.
This raises an important question, though. The focus must shift from what you want to achieve to who you wish to become.
And that brings us to the close of our deep dive today. But before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on.
Let's hear it.
We started by talking about that universal struggle, that intense desire to overhaul your life, and the deep frustration when it inevitably fades.
Right.
Well, if every single action you take is a vote for the type of person you are becoming, actually take a hard look at the last 24 hours of your life.
Oh, that's a tough mirror to look into.
Look at the friction in your environment. Look at the cues you responded to. Every meal, every time you pick up your phone, every conversation. If we tallied up the ballots right now, who did you just elect?
That's a powerful question.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep refining your systems, and keep casting those tiny votes.